Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here for today's webinar, which is the Trust Advantage, how to be the most trustworthy person in every room, every Zoom, and on every platform. Whether you're leading a boardroom, jumping in on a Zoom, or building your own brand on LinkedIn, trust is the currency that makes everything else work. Today, we're going to unpack what it really means to be the most trustworthy person in any room and how to build that reputation consistently. Let's start with a few housekeeping notes. Before we dive in, everyone's microphones have been muted to ensure the best audio quality. If you have any questions during the chat, Andrew will be answering them live in real time, which is really great and exciting. So go ahead and drop those in. We'll address those throughout the webinar, so you don't have to feel like you need to wait till the end. And then slides and additional resources will be shared after the event. And then Onboard helps boards run better board meetings, make faster decisions, and keep sensitive data protected all in one place. It replaces scattered tools like email, PDFs, and shared drives with a single secure platform that holds agendas, votes, records, all the things. With simple, intuitive workflows and enterprise-grade security, Onboard makes governance easier for everyone involved. If you haven't already, go ahead and give us a follow on LinkedIn. This is where we share resources, event announcements, and content from thought leaders just like Andrew. We do that on a regular basis, and you can see the link on your screen right now. All right, let's talk about Andrew. Let me introduce you. He is such a joy and a treat, and I'm so thrilled to have Andrew here today. Andrew is the founder and CEO of Habits at Work, an experiential skills training company focused on helping people build trust and perform at their best through practical habits, mindsets, and communication skills. He has advised companies worldwide on compensation, performance management, and what truly drives human motivation and performance. Andrew, thank you so much for being here. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Team, today I have good news and I have bad news. The good news is that when you have a wonderful board pack that's pristine, well protected, it is the beginning of your board members being fully engaged and leaning in, but it is only half the picture because we tend to trust things not only based on their merits, but on how much we trust the messengers or the people that prepared them. The bad news is that human beings will trust us or not in the milliseconds to minutes when they first meet us, based on a range of false signals which are terribly unfair to use, yet that's how humans operate. And unless we do something about it, you and I are placed into a trust hole that takes months to climb out of. What I'm here to share with you today is how to build trust in you so that your board members can trust the information you share, lean in and engage rather than overstepping because they're not too sure what exactly is going on. As it turns out, the messenger is more important than the message when it comes to trust. So let's jump in. My goal today is to give you a trust advantage, the recipe for earning trust with your board members, especially when you just meet new ones. But what I'm going to show you today is equally applicable for people you have already met and maybe worked with for many years. So let's dig in and start with the bad news. I believe we all have trust issues. If you don't believe that, let's start with an exercise. I would like you, if you have a pen and paper, or maybe in the chat, to make a line, and I'll tell you what to do in the chat in a moment. Make a line that represents the scale of trustworthiness. 1 is, I can't trust you as far as I can throw you. 10 is the most trustworthy person on the planet. And you might say someone is trustworthy if they're honest, if they have good intentions, and if they keep their promises. For a moment, self-reflect. Are you mostly honest? Do you mostly have good intentions? And do you mostly keep your promises? If so, on a scale of 1 to 10, how trustworthy do you think you are? Put it in the chat, please. Just the number. How trustworthy do you think you are without any false modesty? What's your number? Okay, thanks for kicking us off, Jane. Eights, tens, sevens, 8.5, 9. Now, I'm guessing if you weren't very trustworthy, you probably wouldn't admit it. But those people aside, I'm confident that you're right and probably underestimating how worthy of trust you really are. But let's start with that. So far, so good. Next question in the chat again. Same scale of 1 to 10. How much on average do you trust salespeople? Okay, not very highly. And you may say, well, too bad for them, good for me because I'm not in sales. However, when we look at the research on trustworthiness by profession, we see a really interesting pattern that nurses and doctors and other caregivers are given a trust pass. We don't trust strangers terribly much. They're giving about a 5 on average. But worse, people who are in leadership get a lower ranking than strangers. And you might say, but surely someone trusted me enough to appoint me as the CEO or the chief of staff or a senior position. Yes, they did. But the moment that happened, people that worked with you or for you tend to trust you less. And the reason is the same reason why we don't trust salespeople. We think salespeople have a hidden financial motive. We think leaders have a hidden agenda. But either way, what they share in common is when we're trying to help other people, we do so by first helping them change their mind about what they were going to do and what they now should do to serve them. It might be using this platform. It might be signing a resolution in a board meeting. When we attempt to change someone else's mind, they grow suspicious. They think we have a hidden agenda or worse, a hidden financial motive, and they put us in a trust hole that can be very, very deep. What is a trust hole? You're 9 out of 10 trustworthy. When they first meet you, they don't know who you are, so they judge you as a stranger. Or worse, you say, I am the CXO or I'm the head of, and it gets worse. Or you try and change their mind and they put you at the bottom of a trust hole. The result of which is you tell yourself the biggest lie in trust. You've heard it, you've said it, you probably believe it. Trust takes time to build. It just ain't true. Although trust can build over time, most trust is identity trust. It's won or lost in the milliseconds to minutes when someone first meets you, based on the skills or habits that you practice and how you do them, or not. Develop a high trust first impression, or a high trust first 5 minutes with someone that you've met before, and you will avoid a trust hole. Do what most of us have done for years and been trained to do, and you'll likely find people will put you in a trust hole and they won't tell you they have. They'll smile and nod, but then lean in and micromanage you or disengage. And that's your signal that although it feels like there's something wrong with them, what's probably going on is they don't trust us enough. And that's unfair. My job is to give you the tools to allow your inner trustworthiness to actually be seen by other people so that they get the benefit of all you have to offer. How do we do that? Well, it begins by understanding what's at stake. And so I invite you to draw on a piece of paper a nice round pie chart. This is all the facts and figures you know in the entire world. There are billions of them in your head. You'll see why I'm asking these questions in a moment. And I know there's a $200 prize at the end for the poll, but for now, let's imagine that there is a prize for our quick quiz game. In the chat, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Easy at first, harder over time. The first one to get it right wins, well, if I'm honest, no prize, other than the glory of being first. Here's the first question. What's 2 plus 2? In the chat. Okay, Tracy, quick fingers, she won. That's an easy one. Next question. What is the capital of Egypt? Brandy wins that one. Awesome. 2 for 2. So far, so easy. Next one. What is the longest river in the world? Okay. very smart people in the group. Sometimes people say, Brandy, Amazon is the biggest river in the world. The Nile's the longest. Close, but no cigar. If some of you have got two or three, those are easy. Let's ask something more controversial. Do you believe that global warming is true or fake? In the chat, true or fake? Okay, lots of truths. I don't actually, well, I do mind, but for the purpose of this exercise, I don't mind which side you are on. I'm more interested in how you know what you know. For example, when it comes to your views on climate change, did you fly to the North Pole, drill an ice core a mile deep, bring it up, and with your degree and PhD in climate science, you analyzed it and said, turns out the planet's melting? Or did you do what most of us do? You read a book, watched a documentary, listened to a friend, went to a class, read a newspaper or a TikTok or a Facebook post, and that's how you acquired your knowledge from somebody else. And the question I have for you is, what percentage of all your knowledge did you acquire firsthand, you found out for yourself? In other words, how big is the wedge of first-hand acquired knowledge versus you learned it from someone else? In my case, I think that wedge is not even visible. Less than 0.00001% of all the facts I think I know, I'm sure I'm right about, if I think about where I learned it, in school, from someone, watched a documentary, etc. In the chat, what's your percentage of all the knowledge that you have, you actually acquired firsthand? Put it in the chat, please. Okay, somewhere between 5 and 25 so far. I'm guessing it's going to be under 50% for most people. 0.5, in Paula's case, like me, a tiny percentage. So what? Well, here is the big point of today, and if you write anything down today, I hope it will be this. In life, in business, in board meetings, first we decide whom to trust, and that determines what we believe. First we decide who to trust, and that determines if we believe what's in the board pack. The technology from onboard helps with that, but it's trust in you that is the single most important thing. Well, how do we make sure that people trust us in the milliseconds to minutes when they first meet us? Now let's do a quick check-in. May I ask, I'm going to ask 3 questions and then I'll ask you to put something in the chat. I believe that high trust first impressions are a skill. I hope you do too. I also believe that skills require practice over time to get good at them. And I think that practice takes some time. If you too believe that high trust first impressions are a skill, that skills require practice, and practice takes time, put a yes in the chat. Okay, we're on the same page so far. Now the more interesting question. Could you please put in the chat how many minutes in the last year have you spent designing, practicing, and polishing your high trust first impression? How many minutes? Debbie, just checking if the volume is okay. I saw a question in the Q&A. I'm hoping it is. I'm leaning in a little bit more. Dan has done 120. Barbara's done lots. Many of us have done 0. Team, you're about to do more practice today than you might have done in a year or your whole life. So let's get to it. How do we do this? What is the skill and how do we get good at it? It begins by understanding how other people trust us. The judgment other people make about us is based on 3 questions they ask. Can I believe you? The question of sincerity. Can you do this? The question of competence. And have you done this before? The question of reliability. I think that's so far so easy, but notice something that I find terribly profound. Judged trustworthiness is the product and not the sum of these 3 things. In other words, it's not sincerity plus competence plus reliability. It's sincerity times competence times reliability. So what? Well, if any one of these three things is zero, it's all zero. You can't make up for a lack of sincerity with an abundance of competence and reliability. So what? Well, number two, these things are judged in order from left to right. So if someone decides they can't believe us, they not only won't believe what we say about our competence and our reliability, they'll actually believe us less. It's a little bit like if I said, "Hi, my name is Andrew, trust me." You probably wouldn't. Or, as you may have experienced from a salesperson, they say, "Hi, I know we've just met, but let me tell you all about our wonderful product and how good it is, and our smart people, and our amazing tools. And not only that, look at our case studies, and our track record, and our logo slide." We tend to try and prove to others that we're trustworthy by showing the things they should trust, our competence and track record, and they're still thinking, "Who are you? And can I believe you?" Because underneath the question of "can I believe you" is two other questions people ask. Who are you? The question of character. And what do you want? The question of motive. Which is why we mostly don't trust salespeople and leaders. We think their motives are self-interested or in the interest of the company, not in our interests. And board members have that same view. You're in it for yourself or the management team, not for the board or the shareholders. They're wrong, I know, but we're quick to judge, which is why it's so common for us to give each other the advice. Assume good intention. We don't as a default. So if you understand this, it should be clear we really have one job when working with the board. It's to win the judgment we're sincere, so they believe what we say about the board pack we've produced and our competence as a leadership team supporting the board and their function. How do we do that? Team, before I show you a warning, what I'm going to show you, a lot of it is common sense. And you'll say, "Oh, of course." But I beg you to consider that it's not common practice. So knowing what to do and doing it are two completely different things. If you're ready, let's dig in. How do we earn trust? Firstly, when we present ourselves to somebody, before we even open our mouths, what does it look like, or what skill is there in having people judge us as trustworthy as we're walking towards them? Then, what is this thing called executive presence that we seem to like, admire, and trust so much? And what's the skill that underlies it? And finally, how do we get the judgment, "I trust you because you're fully present with me, paying attention only to me, not to everything else that's going on or what you're thinking about for tomorrow"? So let's break each of these down. Here comes the common knowledge, but not common practice piece. How do you present yourself? Well, firstly, a reminder, this is what you do before you even open your mouth. Now you may say, "I know all my board members, so they already know me." But these are things you can do every time you meet someone again to quickly climb out of a trust hole, or indeed when there's board turnover. And frankly, any one of the 10,000 people you're likely to meet in your life, most of them will wrongly judge you as trustworthy or not. They'll wrongly judge you as untrustworthy before you've even opened your mouth. What can you do about it? The research says there are 4 or 5 things. The first is, quite obviously, a warm, genuine smile. Team, this is not a fake smile. This is a warm, genuine smile, which involves the eyes. Can you fake it? No. But you can produce one on demand. And the easy way to do that is to simply say to yourself, what a joy it is to meet this person. Even if it's not, it's a choice you can make that makes it easy to look into someone's eyes and give them what Duchenne, the researcher who coined the name of this, a big Duchenne smile. It's not a douchey smile, it's a Duchenne smile. It's the genuine eyes-involved smile. Why? Because when we smile at someone, it's the most contagious facial expression. They smile back at us, and we're both telling ourselves, if we're smiling at each other, we clearly like each other. There's no threat or anger. We trust people that like us and that we like. So far, so obvious. Next, also obvious, at least in America, appropriate eye contact. Not necessarily what you see in the picture, decent space, respecting privacy and personal space, a second and a half in someone's eyes. Or if you're on Zoom, you have to learn that awkward skill of looking into the camera rather than looking at your beautiful pictures on video so that you feel like I'm looking into your eyes. And thirdly, an open body posture. On Zoom, that looks like sharing your hands early in the call. In real life, it's hands by your side, palms forward if you can. It feels a little awkward, and it's a false signal. None of these things are actually true predictors of trustworthiness, but most people assume they are. So practice them as a skill. Get judged as trustworthy, so you buy the time to show you really are. A Duchenne smile, eye contact, an open body posture. Then you actually make contact, a warm, firm, up and down handshake, not a dominant handshake, not a doormat handshake, showing people that you are willing to treat them as an equal. Okay, team, I've been speaking for a while. Any questions or comments so far that you're dying to ask? Now's your chance. And of course, as you go, I am checking the Q&A from time to time. Okay, so far so good. Please, I welcome your questions, because usually if you're thinking something's a little weird or off or not quite how you would do it, so are many other people. Let's get back to this. These are the things you can do before you open your mouth. And then comes that moment when you do open your mouth. Now, back to the chat, please. I have a question for you. How many of you would say, I'm good at remembering names? Yes, you are, or no, you're not? Carrie is, or Carrie, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. For many of us, we say no, and somehow we say, therefore I have a bad memory. It's not a memory problem. It's a technique problem on both sides of the transaction. I'm going to show you both sides because, as it turns out in the trust research, when people remember our name, they trust us more. And when we remember their name and use it, they trust us more. Because when we know each other's names, it's a signal that we have a deeper kind of relationship of affinity where we like people and we trust the people that we like. So how do we make sure that we're good at both sides of the transaction? Let's start with addressing this idea that we are not good at names, and get rid of that from your mindset. Say, I'm not good at names yet, but by tomorrow I will be, because here are the techniques. Firstly, how do you make it easy for someone to remember your name? What not to do: rush, share both your names, and don't signal that a name is coming. Here's how most of us do it. Hi, I'm Andrew Sykes. We say it quickly, we share our first and last name, and we don't signal that there's a name coming. And when we do say our name, because it's so familiar to us, we say it in a normal tone instead of sharing it as if it's a story. Imagine you're talking to a 5-year-old and you said, once upon a time. You would put a little joy and pause and maybe some tone in there. Please do the same when you're introducing your name. What does that look like? You say, hi, my name is, then a little pause, first name only, shared with some love around it. For exaggeration, you could say, my name is Andrew. You don't have to use jazz hands if you saw them. In fact, I recommend against that. But I hope you get the idea. Versus, I'm Andrew Sykes, where you don't know my name is coming because I said I'm, and could have said I'm hungry, I'm annoying, I'm talkative. But when you say my name is, you tell people there's a name coming, so they're ready. The tiny pause has them pay attention if they weren't, and then you share your first name. Now, I know we can't have a conversation here, but so since you're on mute, try it out loud to your spouse, your dog, or whoever's around. Say, my name is, pause, first name. Do that now. Okay, easy. Let's do the other side of the transaction. When we're meeting people, we often hear their name, it goes in one ear and out the other ear, and then we're embarrassed that we didn't remember it, so we stop using their name, or we try and look at their name tag if they have one, which they always pick up on, or we just wait until they make eye contact, which they pick up on. Instead, begin by telling yourself that remembering other people's names is a gift. As Dale Carnegie said, the sweetest sound to the human ear is our own name. So your mindset is, I have the opportunity to give people a gift by using and remembering their name. Here is the 3-step recipe. Number 1, tell yourself, I got one job, to be prepared to listen to someone's name. If there are 20 people in the room, we're worried about all of the things going on, so we tend not to pay attention. Therefore, we don't even hear the name, or it goes in one ear and out the other ear. So you tell yourself, I'm going into a room. Maybe there are 12 new board members or 3 new board members. I've got one job, to remember their name. Step 2, they introduce their name, probably badly. As a result, you might miss it. Then and then only is it okay to say, I'm so sorry, I didn't catch your name. Could you repeat it, please? 20 minutes later, if you say, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name, that breaks trust. Everyone will forgive you for not hearing it. Not everyone will forgive you for forgetting it. So ask immediately if you miss it. It's okay. And then here comes the magic. In the next minute, say back their name in 3 interesting ways. So that might be, hi Ashley. May I ask, is that Ashley? How's it spelled? And she'll spell her name, and I'll say, Ashley, it's lovely to meet you. You may give them a compliment about something. I love the way you prepared this board pack for today. It's so easy to read. Or something about an acknowledgement of who they are and what they've done. Appropriate. But if you repeat back someone's name, firstly, they love hearing it. Secondly, don't do it too much. If I say, Ashley, hi Ashley, nice to see you, Ashley. So glad to have you here today, Ashley. And it looks like it's fake. 3 turns out to be the golden number. Slow it down a little bit. Use it to ask questions. And you may be saying, this is obvious and easy. I challenge you to try it tomorrow. And if you accept my challenge, write down what you're going to do tomorrow. When next you meet someone, slow down, listen to their name, repeat it back. Hi, Ashley. So nice to meet you. What brings you here today, Ashley? Ashley, my cousin is also named Ashley, my favorite person. Now, if you don't have a cousin, Ashley, that's okay. Find a way to be interesting in repeating back their name. You won't remember their name forever, but you'll probably remember their name for the next hour, certainly long enough to write it down without them seeing if you need to. So a quick repeat. When introducing yourself, hi, my name is Andrew. And when someone introduces themselves to you, listen. I'm so sorry I didn't catch it. Please repeat it. If necessary, when you catch it, say it out loud in 3 interesting ways, and you will be amazed. You could walk into a room with 50 people, do this with every one of those 50 people with no memory training, and odds are you'll remember most, if not everyone's name for an hour or so. Okay, team, so far, so good. Let's see what comes next. When you've shared your name and they've shared their name, what almost comes next, as a default, is the most expensive, most boring question ever made or ever asked. It is the opposite of executive presence. How are you? Why is it boring and dangerous? Imagine that Ashley and I worked together for 30 years. Every single day I come into the office, I say, hi Ashley, how are you doing today? And she says, fine, thanks. How are you? And I say, fine, thanks, and I go to my desk. Firstly, we both lie to each other because we're not fine every single day. Secondly, 30 years later, our relationship is veneer thin. We've learned nothing about each other. We've been polite, but there's a different way of building relationships really, really quickly that defines, in our view, the skill of executive presence. We say, a strange definition to be sure, People with executive presence make the choice and have the skill to ask an appropriate personal question when they've just met you. You won't get out of the habit of asking, "How are you?" But next time you do, let that be a reminder that the next question out of your mouth should be something a little bit more interesting. So you won't stop, but let it be a trigger to say something like, "What are you most excited about today?" Or, "What skill have you been working on for the last month?" Or, "What are you most excited about for the upcoming holidays?" If your reaction to this is, "Hang on, that's a little weird. I've only just met someone. I can't see myself doing that," you're in the right place. However, if you do this, most people will have this kind of reaction. Internal thought, that's a little weird. And then they'll think about the question, and then they'll answer it. And then they will ask you your question back, so be prepared to share your own answer. And the result will be, if I say, "Ashley, what's the best book you've ever read and why?" She'll think, "That's an odd question, Andrew." Then she'll take a pause, think about it, and share her favorite book. And then say, "Andrew, what's your favorite book?" And I'll say, "Thank you for asking," and share mine. And even though we have different favorite books, the incredible thing about humans is it doesn't take much for us to decide we've got more in common than what separates us. Ashley, you like reading. I like reading. You've got a favorite book. I've got a favorite book. Even though they're different, we've got a lot in common. But imagine if we had that conversation every day for 3 weeks with different interesting connection questions. We'd know each other better than most people get to know each other in years. And if you're still worried about the risk, I have an antidote. Knowing that people will ask you your question back and wanting to build trust by being conversationally generous, which means you make it easy for other people to have a conversation with you, do this. If you're worried about a blank stare or someone saying, "That's a weird question," firstly, make it appropriate. Don't ask about sports, weather, or where you're from, because those are things that are in common with everyone often, maybe not sports. But do this. Think of your own answer to your question. Share it as an anecdote. People love little stories. They find it easy to respond to them. And if you follow your little story with the question to which the answer is your little story or anecdote, it won't feel weird anymore. Let me show you an example. If I walk into the networking part before a board meeting and there's a new board member and I say hi, we smile, we say some pleasantries, and then I say, "I just finished reading Harry Potter book number 7 with my son Lex. He loves it. He thinks he's going to the Harry Potter school when he's bigger. I don't have the heart to tell him. May I ask, what's your favorite book? Maybe from when you were a kid, and why?" And someone will find that not a weird question because you've just shared an anecdote. It may be a bit weird that you did, but think about when you're meeting someone new and it's awkward when someone says, "How are you?" "Fine." "So what brought you here today?" The board meeting?" It's very easy for conversations to be stilted and hard. I'll give you the best example of that. If you have teenagers and you say, "How was school?" "Okay." "What did you learn?" "Nothing." "Anything exciting today happen?" "No." And you give up, yeah, because you're going insane and you've asked that question. My friend Craig Wortman gave me this connection question. It works a charm for teenagers. Go home tonight if you've got kids and say, "If there was a zombie apocalypse, which teacher would be eaten first and why?" And then say nothing. And odds are your kids will tell you more about their relationship with each of their teachers in the answer to that question than you've learned in a year. I don't recommend that one for board members, but try it out with your kids and see how it goes. Let me know. Back to the people we meet, the people we serve, and board members. These are people who are themselves often confident and competent in the realm of executive presence, with the ease to ask each other and certainly us appropriate, sometimes inappropriate, questions. I'm not recommending inappropriate. So not too personal, but questions about favorite book. If you could have dinner with someone alive or dead, who would it be and why? And that may be kind of a weird question, but if you just say, last night I went to one of those mystery dinners and the conversation was about who your favorite guest would be if you could have dinner with anyone in the world. I chose Elvis Presley. May I ask, if you could have dinner with anyone alive or dead, who would it be today? So, team, these are questions that are hard-ish to ask because they're almost impossible to come up with on the spot. I have evidence. For your own benefit, write down now 2 interesting but appropriate connection questions. And you will see they're harder to come up with than you might have thought. I've given you an example of some mediocre ones in the slides, but people who are great at being great conversationalists with executive presence have a list of these. They know them in advance. They're prepared to use them, even though when they deliver them, it feels spontaneous. Okay, team, let's do a quick check-in. If there are any questions that are coming up, now's a good time to ask. Or indeed, if there are any that you want to ask and you're not too sure, at any time, feel free to interrupt me. We've only got a couple more things to go. We've asked the question, what does a high trust first impression look like? I've now asked and answered the question, what does small talk look like? It's mostly filled with these interesting connection questions. But then there is a point where people will judge us to be paying attention or not, based on whether or not we're listening to them. The worst advice you may have ever gotten is, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in proportion. It's terrible advice because hearing and paying attention are 2 very different things. You've had that experience of being with someone and they're on their cell phone and you know that they're hearing you, but they're not listening to you. So you say something like, hey, you're not even listening to me. And then they do the most annoying thing in the world. They say, oh, yes, I was. And they play back verbatim what we said. You said your aunt is mad with your cousin because she didn't invite your niece to the wedding. See? That always gets us into trouble because hearing people and paying attention to them is very different. When we judge if someone is paying attention, we don't look at their ears to see if they're hearing us. We look at their eyes to see on what or to whom they're paying attention. Now, in the chat, I want you to tell me whether you love, as much as I do, this beautiful coincidence. The word listen, L-I-S-T-E-N, is made up of 6 letters. First to guess, what else do those 6 letters spell? L-I-S-T-E-N. Enlist, love it, silent, yes. Now I've got 2, enlist and silent. Silent and listen, same 6 letters. It reminds me to pay attention to someone begins with being silent. And I don't mean just closing your mouth. I mean quietening that inner voice. To give yourself the opportunity to really be present with someone. To look at them, yes, to hear them, but most importantly, to use your entire body to pay attention to them so that they feel like they're the only person in a crowded room. We trust people that care enough about us to give us their full attention. If we do those 3 things, we've bought almost all the trust we can, except for one final move. The most dangerous moment in a conversation happens when we've done all this and then someone says the dreaded words in the dreaded moment. Let's go around the room or the Zoom, or tell me a little bit about yourself. And in that moment, most of us put ourselves in a trust hole because we say something like, my name is Andrew, title, resume summary, or worse, resume vomit. I am the head of X. And remember, leaders are less trustworthy than strangers. And then we say, and let me tell you about my career, competence, and track record. Go back to the formula. When people are asking for us to share something about us, what they want to hear is, who are we, character, and what do we want, motive, or put together, they're looking to see, are we sincere, and can they believe us and what we say later about our competence and track record. So how do you answer that without saying, I have good character, trust me, and I am sincere, believe me? You can't tell people, you have to show them. And to demonstrate, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Be ready in the chat. Here's some bad news first. Let's pretend you have to have surgery tomorrow. I'm sorry that's the case, but there's good news. You have a choice of physicians. In the chat, I'd like you to tell me whether you would prefer surgeon A or surgeon B to operate on you. Here goes. Surgeon A says, my name is Dr. Sykes. I'm the head of surgery at Northwestern Medical School. I have done this procedure 50,000 times. I get great clinical outcomes. I get paid a lot of money for doing this. I can't wait to cut you open tomorrow. That's Dr. A. The second, Dr. B, says, my name is Andrew. When I was 10 years old, my older brother died from this disease. And I promised myself no one else would suffer that loss. I can't wait to work with you tomorrow. Who would you trust, A or B? Okay, Dana says A. And actually, team, Lisa also, I would also say A if I was being rational, because I've got more data about their competence and track record. But most of us are suckers for a good story. And the truth is, there's a third choice. Dr. C. My name is Dr. Andrew Sykes. When I was 10 years old, my older brother died from this disease. I promised myself no other family would suffer that loss. I've done this procedure many times. I get fantastic clinical outcomes. I can't wait to work with you tomorrow. First, sincerity, why I do what I do and why I'm passionate about it. Then competence, then track record. And the way to do that for yourself is to figure out how to tell your own personal origin story. Now, team, I'm going to show you how to do that in a moment, but I did get a question in the chat. Can a poor first impression be fully repaired, and if so, how? And the answer is yes, it can. It takes longer to climb out of a trust hole than to fall in one. There is an exception. Some people will judge you so harshly that they'll never even give you a second chance. But most people will. And the best way to do that is to do exactly what you would do in a first impression the next time you meet them. And if you say, well, I've already introduced myself and I blew it, you could say next time you meet them, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. Tell me about your background and why you do what you do. They'll share, and most people will reciprocate, at which point you share your personal origin story, what I'm about to show you. But connection questions can repair an otherwise broken or tarnished relationship as well. Now, there is more to the art of restoring trust. We don't have time for that today, but feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to give you some more depth if that helps. Let's get back to the personal origin story. How do you respond in this moment? You've got about 45 seconds, a very short story that looks like this. First, you're answering the questions people have. Who are you and what do you want? How you do that is your personal origin story, which begins with context. And it says the credible past, but this is not the time to try and build credibility by talking about competence. This is the briefest summary. It may sound something like, I've had the privilege of being the chief of staff at XYZ company for the last 20 years. Or I've been supporting this board over the last 18 months, and before that I had a wonderful career in A, B, or C. Brief as possible, because this actually isn't interesting. It's a setup for what comes next, which is something has happened to you in your life or career where you realized that you wanted to do what you're doing today. The difficulty is this is hard for you to discover about yourself. And so you really have to dig. Now, clearly we work for money, but you can't say, I do this because I make a lot of money. Clearly we work for personal growth and opportunity, but that's not trustworthy. What's trustworthy is I was working in finance for years. And then what I realized is the biggest impact in an organization are the decisions that are made by and hopefully executed on behalf of the board. So I looked for an opportunity to be in service of board members. And then you end it by saying, and today, and you share the inspiring impact you have today. Today, I have the privilege of working with the onboard platform to produce high trust, secure, easy to use board packs. Or today, I work in corporate finance where I bring needed capital to the businesses of tomorrow. Or I'm a teacher that has the privilege of teaching the kids of today how to be the responsible citizens of tomorrow. You own a humble part in the big impact your whole organization has. Remember what most people do: hi, rank, name, serial number, resume, vomit, and we sit in a trust hole. This personal origin story is hard to build. It takes some time and practice. It will feel a little awkward to start with, but do it well and you will gain the most valuable thing there is in life, which is, at least in our context, when board members trust you, they give you all sorts of advantages. That's your trust advantage. Specifically, when they trust you, they'll lean in instead of disengage. They'll trust you if you're in the leadership team or your leadership team to lead the business without overstepping. And that's an enormous trust advantage for you to claim. Team, I hope today was useful. If you'd like some more information, feel free to reach out to me to learn more about the trust advantage. Here's a QR code if it's interesting. This is for our trust newsletter. We'd love you to join us. Trust me, we don't sell anything over it, but we do share our ongoing research in the art and science of being the most trustworthy person in every room and on every Zoom and every platform. Thank you, Ashley and team, for trusting me with this webinar today.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I would say I loved the connection question. Learning, simple things like what's your favorite book is such a great line, and it tells a lot about the person right off the bat. So, just really appreciate your insights on all of that. I think we all have a lot to think about after listening to today's session and implementing as we go into the next room of strangers. So we really appreciate your expertise and sharing all of this with our community. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. We really hope that you're walking away with some actionable ideas that you can put to work right away. And last, but certainly not least, if anything you heard today resonated with you and you want to explore how Onboard can help your board or leadership team, we would love to connect. Drop meeting in the chat or use the QR code we're sharing now to book time directly with our team. We make it easy, no pressure, just a great conversation. Thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next month.